Since 1989, Bob Lazar has been one of the most controversial figures in UFO history. He claims he worked at a secret facility south of Area 51 called S4. He claims he saw 9 alien crafts. He claims the government was hiding a stable form of element 115, a fuel source for anti-gravity.
No, I'm talking about the 115.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I have to think about how I'd...
What is the problem with this?
I don't want to get myself into more trouble by admitting something. So I just have to dance around a couple.
Supporters say he blew the whistle on the biggest cover-up in human history, while skeptics point to many of the claims being unverified. This is the complete story of a UFO whistleblower pioneer and the only Bob Lazar video you'll ever need. In 1989, Bob Lazar went on a TV station near Las Vegas, KLAS. He went with the cover name Dennis. He claims there are 9 extraterrestrial craft out of a military base known as S4 out in Area 51, the first time anyone had ever publicly mentioned that facility.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs, that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
No ET craft, ET technology, anything like that at Area 51. This is why S4 was made specifically to separate it there. People at Area 51 do not have the clearance. I was paid by the Department of Naval Intelligence.
He claims he was hired by the U.S. Navy to reverse engineer a UFO to assist in uncovering the seemingly impossible to understand science behind it. He claims he witnessed a propulsion system for the craft using a stable form of the element 115, which was not synthesized on Earth until 2003. He witnessed anti-gravity propulsion systems, asserting that it was already understood that gravity was a wave, which wasn't officially discovered until 2015.
And as opposed to what we're used to, for instance, a plane, once it's in the air, we envision thrust or some force coming out the back of it to push it forward. The crafts work completely opposite of that. What they do is once they're hovering in the air, they'll swing the gravity, 2 remaining gravity generators up in front of them and create a distortion, essentially a downhill, and the craft rolls downhill for infinity. It's always chasing a little distortion.
He also claims they ran off gravity wave amplifiers.
And there were 3 large gravity amplifiers. These devices looked like about a 2-foot diameter, 4-foot long piece of pipe. And that's what emits the gravitational waves that propel the craft.
You know, one of the things I think in the gimbal video, the way the craft that we worked on flies is it doesn't fly like a conventional aircraft does, and it doesn't fly like a flying saucer would in a 1950s movie. It flies belly first. I mean, it may set down conventionally, but it always rotates. It does a roll maneuver, puts its belly towards the target, and then moves away at high speed.
The Navy has patents for gravitational wave generators and amplifiers. He claimed he was told these craft were from Zeta Reticuli, a binary star system. He claims he was brought in to replace previous employees that were killed in an explosion similar to a small tactical nuke upon them attempting to cut into the craft.
You know, I was replacing somebody that Barry worked with prior to me, and I think there was some horrific accident that I didn't have a whole lot of information on, but, you know, Barry alluded to that.
A horrific accident, like where someone died, or?
Yeah, where somebody died. Yeah, I think what they were trying to do was cut into one.
Oh,
now,
Jesus.
they had more than one there, and that was supposedly there was an unannounced nuclear test, and that's what it was.
Lazar states he brought friends out to the desert to watch UFO test flights since he knew the flights were scheduled on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. until he was caught, interrogated, and this is what initially led to him going public.
Since I had the test flight schedule, statistically, the amount of traffic in the surrounding areas on the highway was lowest on Wednesdays, and that's why Dennis told us that all the test flights occurred only on Wednesdays.
Despite the global attention, Lazar has remained mostly out of the public eye, rarely giving interviews, with exceptions including Jeremy Corbell's 2018 documentary and his 2019 appearance on Joe Rogan, Rogan's most popular episode ever, currently sitting at 65 million views. But who is Bob Lazar, and how did he get here? Lazar claims to have gotten a master's in physics from MIT, along with a master's in electronic technology from Caltech. He also attached a jet engine to a Honda, and was interviewed for the local paper in 1982, where he was referred to as a physicist at the Los Alamos laboratory. This is where some of his claims can begin to enter some murky waters. There are no verifiable records at either of those universities that he was enrolled, received any degree. Lazar states he was unable to remember any professor's or classmate's name other than one named William Duxler. This Duxler was traced down by Stanton Friedman, a renowned UFO researcher at the time, as a professor at Pierce College, which records do indicate Lazar took at least one class there, and Duxler states that he never worked at Caltech like Lazar claims. Additionally, Friedman claims to have uncovered information showing that Bob Lazar graduated from his high school in the bottom third of his class and briefly went to a community college before dropping out. Skeptics also point to Lazar's 1980 marriage certificate, which reportedly shows his highest completed grade was 12, even though Lazar claimed to have earned a bachelor's degree in 1979, but this is untrue. First, I could find no verifiable evidence that this marriage certificate is legit in any way, along with Lazar stating he believes he received his degree the same year he went to Los Alamos in 1982. Additionally, on JRE, while talking to Christopher Mellon, another UFO whistleblower, Rogan makes an interesting comment on Lazar's education history.
It's interesting. He did falsify his educational records, and he's been involved in some other things, and it just doesn't.
You talking about the MIT records?
Yeah.
Yeah. He explained that to me. He said that he was working on something for the government and they sent him to MIT to learn something. And I can't say too much. I'll tell you off air because he told me not to talk about it. But it makes more sense when you hear his description of it, that essentially it wasn't documented that he was studying there, because what he was doing was really a terrible thing, a terrible experiment they were working on. When I explain it to you, maybe it'll make more sense.
Later in the same podcast episode, Lazar claims he actually does remember classmates and professors, but refuses to name them due to people associated with him usually being burned in one way or another.
Do you know anybody that you went to school with?
Yes, I do.
And have they verified that they went to school with you?
Well, I gave Jeremy some names, but the reason I don't say these names publicly is because every single time I mention a name, somebody gets in trouble.
They don't.
In the same year, Lazar was in the paper for the jet car and claims to have received his degree and begun working in Los Alamos. He appears in the Los Alamos National Laboratory phone directory.
Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there. They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians. A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It too mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist. We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
But, and this is something that I interestingly see cut out of many people's videos on this topic, his listing included a K/M designation, which is a subcontractor of the lab, not directly employed by the actual lab. 3 former colleagues, including his direct superior, were tracked down and all independently verified that Lazar was not a physicist at the base, but an electric technician. One of them even described him as intelligent but crooked, and claims Lazar was let go for misusing business phones for personal business. Security records do show Lazar was issued a Z number, verifying Lazar did in fact work at the Los Alamos facility, even though it is still debated on if this was as a physicist or a subcontractor. Now, moving from 1982 to 1989, the biggest year of Lazar's story, and some claim to be the most important year in UFO history, second to the Roswell incident in 1947. Lazar claims he applied and was hired to EG&G, an American defense contractor that, just like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing, commonly are mentioned in the discussion of reverse-engineered UFO technology. He claims his work schedule would be unpredictable, with him receiving calls and being told to get to the airport where an unmarked plane would take him to S4.
It was really weird that I would be only called in on certain times and certain days, and they would be weird hours too. Most of the time was later in the evening. I mean, I can get a call at 11 o'clock at night. By 11:45, you need to be at the McCarran terminal.
While at S4, Lazar claims he saw 9 extraterrestrial craft of different shapes.
Now, you said there's 9 of them, and you got a brief glimpse at the other ones. How were they different?
Oh, they looked completely different. One looked like I called a Jell-O mold, and it looked like a classic Jell-O mold with the rippled sides to it. One was a very flat disc, like like a straw hat or something like that.
He claims to have been given a mountain of paperwork, though he admits he couldn't tell what was real or intentionally misleading, but claims it informed him the crafts were from a planet revolving around a binary star system known as Zeta Reticuli.
I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was reading, I thought, is this some kind of test?
See if you're crazy?
Well, not to see if I'm crazy, a lot of times they'll take in real high security jobs. I mean, they'll intentionally insert nonsense into them. Whether it's to confuse the fact or if for someone was to leak it out, they would carry that information along and know where it came from. So I read through the documents, but, I didn't know if this was, part of some kind of test or...
Right.
To this day, no exoplanets have been confirmed around Zeta Reticuli. However, debris interpreted as a dust disk has been detected, suggesting small bodies like comets or dwarf planets could exist, though this is not necessarily evidence of planets. According to Lazar, a co-worker named Barry explained that the crafts use gravitational wave generators and amplifiers powered by a stable isotope of element 115.
Where it will work against the natural gravity wave of the Earth, and it produces a lift in that effect. Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field. Being inside that field essentially doesn't shield you, but essentially you're in, and this is a terrible way to say it, almost in a different realm, because you're now influenced only by that gravitational field. For instance, people wonder how a craft like this can make a turn at such high speed, a 90-degree turn, when they would imagine people slamming up against the wall or something to that effect. Well, that really wouldn't happen. Inertia would have no effect.
Now, element 115 is sometimes credited to Lazar for mentioning this back in the 80s, while it wasn't officially discovered until 2003. Elements are known to scientists to be theorized long before they are discovered. Currently, we've discovered up to element 118, but have theorized up to 170 and 180. What stands out is Lazar's claim that the element had to originate elsewhere in the universe because it would be too heavy to form on Earth in any meaningful amount. That part is confirmed in mainstream science. The element, now called moscovium, decays in under a second when synthesized on Earth. Lazar also mentioned the element is stable, which also matches mainstream scientific thought that there is an island of stability somewhere around elements 114 to 116. With an island of stability being something where these heavier elements have longer half-lives rather than decaying in milliseconds and can actually be put to use. He also claims to have witnessed a test flight. He claims he was given the test schedule Wednesday nights at 8 p.m., specifically chosen because it statistically had the lowest air traffic in the area. He claims that with the clearance he had, it was known that the government was tapped into his phones, but that he could not discuss anything with anyone, including his wife, so she was unaware the phones were tapped. With this, the base was aware that Lazar's wife was having an affair with her flight instructor, unbeknownst to Bob. As a result, Lazar was temporarily removed from the call-in list. At S4, employees were expected to maintain stable personal lives, and the affair was considered a possible risk to his psychological reliability. Not knowing his wife was having an affair, and not knowing why he hadn't been called back in weeks, Lazar says he began telling friends about his work and bringing them out to watch the test flights in March of 1989. He says he got away with this several times, even capturing this footage that Jeremy Corbell also included in his documentary, Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. On the 4th trip, on April 5th, guards caught them and Lazar was interrogated. During this interrogation, the base confronted Lazar about his wife's affair and threatened him due to the serious security breach he had just made, with Lazar stating a gun was placed to his head. Despite this, he was not detained and was allowed to return home. Lazar begins to freak out, having received calls from his superior Dennis, asking him, "Do you know what we're going to do to you now?" He claims cars tried to run him off the road, unknown cars surveilling his home, and police refusing to assist after speaking with whoever was parked outside of his house, while they continued to follow Lazar everywhere he went.
One day when I was getting on Interstate 15, driving down Charleston Boulevard, a car came up alongside of me, and I thought he was just trying to race me to get on the freeway. This was after I had left the project. There was a gunshot, and the back of the car was hit, and I skidded off into the median. And I stopped, and I was frightened, and I just stood there because I thought the guy was going to be alongside of me and just shoot me. I had nothing to do. I was essentially paralyzed with fear, and I waited there, and then nothing else happened. It was an attempt on my life, but by who specifically, I don't know. Though I was threatened before I had left, that they threatened my wife's life and my life, so I can only put two and two together and say that they were kind of pissed at me.
With his fear increasing, Lazar decided to turn to the media after finding investigative journalist George Knapp, and in May of 1989 aired a bombshell interview under the pseudonym Dennis.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers, flying discs, that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
But this isn't where the phenomenon caught fire with Lazar. It was actually multiple months later, in November and December of 1989, where Bob Lazar finally was interviewed, revealing his name and face to the world. This immediately became popular worldwide, with Lazar even doing interviews for Japanese news stations. After these series of interviews, and 5 radio show episodes with John Lear and George Knapp titled UFO Line, Lazar largely disappeared from the public eye, being well known for wanting to not be bothered by the topic anymore, and publicly admitting regret that he ever came forward.
I would probably have played along for a longer time. I would like to have known a little bit more about the technology, and probably kept quiet if I could have. I almost wish I had done that. You know, it's it's really only caused headaches and problems. But I believe if I was given the opportunity again to go back in time and redo it, I think I pretty much would have just shut up and gone along with the program.
Lazar's personal life is also not without controversy. Around the same time of December of 1989, it is rumored Lazar paid $100 to interview a prostitute about opening an illegal brothel, and 1 month later, in January of 1990, signed an apartment lease for this, and within 6 months was arrested and hit with a felony charge of pandering for this brothel. It's also rumored the Japanese TV show also had it in the deal that Lazar would have to travel to Japan for the interview, and that he agreed to do so but then later refused, claiming government threats prevented him from going. In 1998, he founds his company United Nuclear, focusing on nuclear material and chemical sales. In July 2006, he reports a call to the FBI for an individual looking to manufacture sarin gas. 2 months later, in September of 2006, the Department of Justice charged United Nuclear for selling illegal fireworks materials. In August of 2008, Lazar again contacts the FBI, this time about a person seeking to purchase polonium-210. July 2017, a FBI search warrant is conducted in connection to the murder of Janelle Sturcell, who died of thallium toxicity. Thallium sulfate, a colorless, tasteless, and odorless compound, has been described as the poisoner's poison due to the substance's high toxicity and difficulty to detect. United Nuclear's records show Lazar sold thallium, but he is not specifically listed as a suspect in the murder in the police documents. In December 2018, Jeremy Corbell released a documentary on Lazar, followed by his 2019 appearance on Joe Rogan and the release of his autobiography, Dreamland. With all of this information, people remain torn on whether or not to believe Lazar's story. Many knowledgeable people in the scientific community state Lazar clearly has an advanced knowledge of physics, and many prominent figures in the UFO community continuously stating that they believe Lazar. On the other hand, most of his claims are unverifiable other than other people saying they believe him.
So let's talk a bit about the conclusions I've come to. If Bob Lazar is not telling the truth as he sees it, then he is probably the best liar that I have ever seen. I can't verify that what he's saying is true. And frankly, this is not something that I know much about. I don't know much about all the conspiracy claims and aliens and all of this stuff. This isn't an area that I explore very often, but I didn't identify any lies. What fascinates me so much about this is that if what he's saying is not true, if it is just some sort of elaborate lie, he is probably the best liar that I have seen, or at least one of the best liars I've seen, if in fact he's not telling the truth.
And many find it difficult to stomach that there are no verifiable records of any of the education he claims to have had.
Well, they're trying to make me a non-person.
Explain. You called where?
Well, the schools that I went to, the hospital that I was born at, past job, and essentially nothing comes up with my name in it.
From Las Vegas TV stations to international headlines, from alleged government secrets to chemical companies to prostitution, Bob Lazar's life reads like a thriller. Believe him or not, his story is a key chapter in the history of UFOs, one that continues to influence researchers, whistleblowers, and enthusiasts decades later. His claims force the world to confront the possibility of technologies far beyond current understanding, antigravity, extraterrestrial propulsion, and that the government may be hiding some society-altering discoveries. And while some questions remain unanswered, one thing is clear. The truth about what's out there is far from settled, and the story of Bob Lazar is far from over.
What you're saying makes sense. It doesn't make sense that it's bullshit.
That happened exactly like I said it did, Joe.